All right, so we're gonna do a like CS:GO major tier list. This is like the definitive edition. All 19 majors or whatever it was. Starting with winter, ending at Paris. We're gonna go through, do all of them, rank them S to D. Obviously, S being best, D being worst. If you've never seen a tier list or whatever, um, this is gonna be my opinion. This isn't like there is no like I don't know, I'm rating this based off of like production value or the playoff run of the winner or whatever. This is just my how I feel. I'm not like there isn't a spreadsheet of like, you know, production value was like 50, but the playoff run was like 100. So it's definitively a B because it's like a 75 or whatever. There none of that shit. I'm not doing that. I'm just going how I feel about it. Okay, so I'm editing this right now, right before we start getting into the nitty gritty. I keep saying the term playoff bracket. That's not actually what I meant. I meant playoff teams or like just the top eight in general. If you hear me mention this is a really good playoff bracket and then like don't talk about the playoff bracket. I just talk about the playoff teams. I probably meant playoff teams or like the top eight. I'm not gonna go through and re-record this entire like 40 something or other minute video just to fix me saying that. So I'm just gonna stick this in the beginning and hope it works out. So thanks. I messed up a little bit, but we'll. I hope this helps. I hope you understand what I mean a little bit better. Yeah, that's all I have to say in this little early bit here. Um, we'll start with winter, obviously, and work our way back to Paris. Starting with winter, winter was okay. Winter was the first, obviously. Winter had a good playoff bracket. Looking back at it, Fnatic obviously weren't the best team at the time, and they did win. NIP should have probably won that. They got blown out in the finals on one or multiple of the maps. Yeah, they got blown out on Train, 16-2. It just, I feel like everything other than like if the final had gone the other way, this is like S tier. It's just that NIP didn't win. Very games, NIP Very Games semifinal game should have probably been the grand final, but just the way that because Very Games went 2-1 in the groups, they got seeded the way that they did. It is what it is. It has to be a B because of this. Production value, I can't even fucking remember. It's been a minute since I've rewatched like winter games, but it was so long ago that it's not like it would have been anything special. Yeah, it did have a very very good top eight. Very games complexity, NIP and Fnatic in the top four is ridiculous for the time. That complexity and that Very Games roster were both incredibly good. All teams that were in the top eight probably were teams that should have been there. Recursive maybe questionable, but that was Happy Uzi Maniac and Kenny's team. They were. I mean, I can't speak for back then. I wasn't really playing the game, watching it back then. I was bigger on COD at the time, but yeah, this is a B for me. We move on to Kato. Kato 14. This is an A. Like, I feel like this is like a definitive A. I feel like it's definitely up there in like top major playoff runs from the winner, in my opinion. They had to play. They had to play LDLC, LGB, and NIP. Obviously, LDLC strong team at the time. LGB underrated team at the time. There was also the Mirage went into overtime, which was the one that LGB won when they went because it was 2-1. And the grand final was VP versus NIP, obviously. Very strong and obvious win from the Plow. This was like one of the many like obvious times that you can cite where the Plow was in full effect. really this major and, you know, Atlanta in 2017 were like the two like definitive plow majors. Um, yeah, VP winning at home too. That's something that didn't happen very often. It only happened a handful of times. You know, it was just a good major all around. You know, I think this was the first Cato in the Spodek. Maybe the first Cato major in the Spodek. I don't know. I actually don't know that. I probably shouldn't definitively try to say that, but um, great, great major in my opinion. Another great playoff bracket. You know, looking back, some like every team that was there deserved to be there. And that's one of the things that, like, to me, I think is important when it comes to like major playoff brackets. You know, if if we look at like Blast or Rio, there are some teams that didn't deserve to be there, and they were. When you look at Cato, when you look at Winter, when you look at, you know, some of these other ones, like Cluj is another one that I can think of. Boston, these like it's Cato 19 too. Like these are all ones where every team in the top eight should have been there, and that just like all of those things cemented into this being one of my favorites. Um, so Cologne 2014, I go back and forth with this one. I mean, it's obviously NIP getting theirs, you know, finally after like okay then. This was obviously NIP getting theirs after finally, you know, took them just too long, but they did get there. They did get their ring finally. It was like, you know, after time and time again failing and, you know, losing to the best teams in the semis or the final or whatever, I guess finals. You know, they finally did it. I know that a lot of people question like the final, I think, of that one. It was a little weird. Um if I don't remember how it worked, but I feel like there was like the maybe not a coin flip, but like a randomizer for the third map or something. Overall, it was an okay major. Again, I think most of the teams that were in the top eight should have been there. Um, yeah, I really don't think that looking at this, like any of those teams shouldn't have been there. Dignitas still had Fetish at the time. That was like one of the weird early lineups with the Dupree, Zip, and Device. Yeah, again, respectable. I think this is a respectable B. It's not bad, but it's not perfect. Like B is fair in my opinion. So moving on, we'll get to winter, 2014. I think this is up there in the worst. Um, a lot of people I'm sure will disagree. You know, this is heavily based off of my opinion that the best team wasn't in the final. The team that lost in the quarterfinal was in the final. That, you know, the team that lost in the quarterfinal shouldn't have been there. Um, Obviously, if Fnatic backs out, the Frenchies should go on, but I don't know. That one's never really felt right to me. I just don't think that I can say this is a good major if the winners lost in the quarterfinals. Like, it is what it is. You know, it's not really on DreamHack even. Like, there are some, you know, DreamHack events when you go back and watch them and they're like, wow, that's awful. But it's not DreamHack's fault for once. Like, this is just the team that lost in the quarterfinals made it to the final and won, and they shouldn't have. Definitively, I feel like I can say that, like, they shouldn't have been there, but it is what it is. This is a D tournament. Like I said, it's not DreamHack's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's just that Olaf did the boost, and Fnatic should have been in the final, and they just weren't. And it just is what it is. This was a stretch of 4 majors in a row, starting with Winter 14 and ending at Cluj, where the prime Fnatic lineup could have won any of those 4 majors and probably should have won all four, but you know this is just one that they didn't, and it is what it is. So it's a D. Like I said, my sole basis of this argument is just that Fnatic won and should have moved on, but they didn't, and so it's a D. So moving on to Kato 15, this is the first of the Fnatic wins with Olaf and Krims. I don't know where to put this. It's one that's kind of been memory hold for me, honestly. I'm gonna look at the top 8. Both teams that were in the final should have been there. I think Keyed Stars is like a weird one that I don't really know should have been there. Penta too, like Crystal Next, Dennis Spitty's team. The top 8 is just a little weird, but a lot of the teams that were there should have been there. Like TSM, Navi, Envy, Virtus Pro, all those teams obviously should have been there. They are ones that I would expect to be in the top 8 of a major. I just kind of struggle to feel one way or another about this one. I mean, obviously it's one of the first Fnatic victories. I guess it is the first Fnatic victory with Olaf and Krims. That's cool. That's awesome. This was a very great run by Fnatic, running through Penta, VP, and then obviously NIP at the end. It was a close final, 16-14, 10-16, 16-13. That's fairly close in terms of things. I guess this is a B. I just fail to feel strongly about it, honestly. We'll move on here to Cologne. This is the now 3rd major win for Fnatic, the 2nd with Olaf and Krims. This was against Envy in the final. This was an extremely good top 8. LG, which is obviously Fallen's team, but this is prior to so this is still with Steel and Bolts. Team Kingwin is here. This is obviously the Rain, Michael Ailey, Fox, Dennis, Scream team. This is before they went to, I think, G2. I think they were with G2 in Cluj. And I don't think Scream was there. Or maybe Dennis wasn't there either. But this is again another really solid playoff bracket, I guess. It's another good run for Fnatic here. They played Luminosity, VP, and then Envy. I think Envy had a good run here too, playing Navi, TSM, and then obviously Fnatic in the final where they lost. But this was another really good playoff bracket. I feel like this is probably an A. Maybe I'll move. I think I'm gonna move this one down, and this will stay an A. But this is an A in my opinion. This is one of the better ones of the time. I feel like this is maybe a breakout tournament for Guardian too. This is where we were starting to see the beginnings of what Guardian could be. This is obviously cementing the Fnatic team as the best at the time before we got Astralis later on. We'll move on. I guess I didn't really touch on it too much, but Cluj. I think this is maybe not the best. I feel a little bit more strongly about another one, maybe 2, but this is definitely top tier. It doesn't get much better than this. We're talking about in my opinion, the strongest playoff bracket ever. It's actually mostly the same teams from. Is it all the same teams from Cologne? I think it's the same teams from Cologne if you ignore that Kingwin is now G2 and they got rid of Scream. They changed Scream for Jacob. So, yeah. Same teams as the last one. Another just really strong playoff bracket. TSM had an incredible tournament. I just Cluj is like in my brain. This is where this was the strongest Counter Strike that existed. This is the most competitive. Maybe Boston was a little more. Maybe Kato 19 was a little more. Maybe Berlin 19 was a little more. But I just feel like this is peak. This is peak Counter Strike. This is it. There's just nothing more. That's it. It's an S. This is second or third best major of all time. There's just too many great storylines that like close. Kenny finally got his. It was just all the right things happen. This is the final one for the Frenchies. I guess unless you count Vitality, this is the last one for the Frenchies. Obviously it was Kenny and Apex's first. Kenny's MVP run, like all the storylines for like some of the cool stuff ended here. So we'll move on to Columbus. Columbus is another very, very, very strong major. Another one where I feel like competition is definitely peaking at this point. Like obviously Cold and his MVP run. This is Cold in his like number one year. We're talking about Navi with Guardian when Guardian's completely like powered up. We're talking about Astralis is now together. Like this is the Astralis core. Before they had Kirby, they still had Cajun at the time. They were still kind of in their like choker phase top 4 team. Team Liquid with hard carry, like put the entire team on his back. Simple, like another really, really strong playoff bracket. This one was Luminosity, Navi, Astralis, Team Liquid, NIP, Fnatic, Counterlogic Gaming, CLG, and Virtus Pro. Another just top tier playoff run. Obviously Luminosity had one of the best, maybe the best ever playoff run to win the tournament. Like, played VP, played that, Team Liquid team with Liquid, played that Team Liquid team with Simple, and then obviously in the final played Navi and like blew them out on the final map. Everybody just remembers like watching the player cams, everybody on that Navi team looked totally dejected. It was just an obvious like top run. I'm going to stick this in S for now. I don't know that it'll stay there. Again, these are all like to be adjusted if I need to. We'll move on to Cologne 16 here. Cologne 16 is another one that I kind of like memory hold a little bit. I just don't feel like it was anything too special. It was obviously SK going back to back. Well, they're now SK. Team Liquid making it to the final, first time that ever happened for a North American team, and they were again still being hard carried by Simple. Somebody get him a fucking perk. His back hurt. He was already replaced on this team by this point. I think he might have even already been with Navi technically, but that's besides the point. Again, another really good playoff bracket. Maybe one of the strongest ever. SK, Team Liquid, VP, Fnatic, Astralis, Flipside, Navi, and then Gambit, which was a little weird. Let's see. Another like strong playoff run for SK. Started with Flipside, which is whatever. It's Blade's team. Nobody ever remembers it for being good. played VP. This was VP kind of powering back up again. You know, towards the end of this team's tenure, really, 26. Well, I guess not really. They still had another like year and a half, but then they played Team Liquid. Blew out Team Liquid at the final, but I mean, nobody expected anything from that Liquid fucking roster, anyways. I mean, just a good run for SK. You know, another one where Cold was in his like MVP world #1 ranking era. Like some very great and dominant games from SK here. You know, yeah. I feel like this is probably deserved of like an A, maybe a B. I'll keep it in a B for right now. No, I'll put it back in A. All right, move on. We'll go to Atlanta here. Atlanta, this is like one of my favorites personally. I really loved the E-League ones. It was really cool to get to like watch it on TNT and shit. I think this had like some of the best, like even just looking at like the broadcast talent, it was insane. So looking at the playoff bracket again, solid. Some teams that you didn't really expect to be here were. I don't want to necessarily say that like Gambit shouldn't have been there, but they probably shouldn't have been there. Navi, they kind of bombed in the quarters. Probably should have made it further than they did, but they got stuck against like Astralis when they were at peak Astralis, when they were still the Kirby lineup. So this was Navi, Astralis, Fnatic, Gambit, VP, North, FaZe, and SK. I think this was still FaZe. Yeah, this was FaZe before they had changed up too much of anything interesting. Yeah, Rain, AZ, Alu. They did have Kerrigan, and they still had Keo. So this wasn't FaZe when they were completely powered up or anything. North, I think this was an MSL team. Yeah, MSL config, Rubino, Cajun, and Magisk. Another maybe not. I mean, honestly, I would totally take North over, I think it's Godsend. Yeah, Godsend. Yeah, definitely take North over Godsend in the playoffs, but round like in the two, they played 2-2 against Godsend is what I'm talking about there. I definitely would prefer to see North in the playoffs over Godsend. Godsend was like a nobody team at the time, if I remember correctly. But Atlanta, just one of the top ones. Great crowd atmosphere. One of the best production value ones. I think this is going to go to A for right. Okay, I'm going to move that down. This is going to go A. Just amazing production value, great crowd. I know those are like things that I haven't said anything about before, but that's what I'm going to say for right now. Moving on to PGL Krakow, everybody's favorite. Krakow was just Krakow. I don't know. I don't know. It's definitely like bottom tier, probably D tier. Looking at the playoff bracket, it was Gambit, Immortals, Astralis, VP, Fnatic, SK, Big, and North. There's a lot of people that probably shouldn't have been there. I just remember watching this major and there just being tech issues every 5 minutes. Like that was the biggest takeaway from PGL Krakow for me, was literally the tech issues. Like I was in high school at this time. I was waking up early to go to school, obviously, like 6 o'clock or whatever. So like they were playing games early in the morning, and I had something to watch in the morning, which was cool. But I just remember rampant tech issues. Like I don't know if that's really how that like worked, if that was what the major was really like, if it was actually that bad. It's just how I remember it in my head. It was just tech issues and tech issues and tech issues, and then obviously maybe I'm not remembering this right, but I think even for like a semifinal game, like all of like it like ran past curfew or something, and like the crowd got kicked out. I could totally be remembering a different thing, but I feel like that was totally a thing that happened. Unless I'm remembering something else. But either way, it was just a bad tournament, man. Like I said, rampant tech issues. I think this is gonna go D. Um, yeah, I think this is worth a D. It definitely isn't like the team's fault or anything. I really feel like it was on PGL at the time. PGL later did start to fix themselves a little bit, but yeah, they'll sit in and D for right now. Move on. Boston. I think this is the best major. I feel like that's not a unpopular opinion when I say that. I think it was the best, one of the best finals. I don't know. It definitely gives Stockholm a run for its money. It definitely gives Antwerp a run for its money in terms of finals. One of my favorite finals. I guess Atlanta had a really good final too. But it was like all of the crazy storylines. I actually have a like 3,000 word script sitting right now for like a video just going on about Boston and all of the things. And I guess it's not exactly about Boston. It's about the FaZe team. I believe that they're the best team to never win a major. That 2018 FaZe team is just unbelievable amounts of talent. One of the greatest oppers of all time was on that team. In my opinion, the best in-game leader, the best, maybe the second or third best player was on that team, and he wasn't even like, in his prime or anything, but he was the supportive element. Of course, Rain was on the team. It is what it is. They didn't win. Obviously, Cloud9 did. Great storyline there for Cloud9. They played they took the hard route. Down 2-3 and then reverse, or down 0-2 and reverse sweep to 3-2. Had to play G2 and then they had to play I don't know if they were MIBR or SK at the time. I think they were SK, but I had to play one of the two. I think it was SK. And then obviously FaZe. I think SK was even world number 1 at the time when Boston happened. They're just playing the game on hard mode. Skadoodle came out, had his one ever good tournament run. His one ever good tournament performance. Like, it was just top. It was top tier. This is definitely an S. I feel comfortable putting it there. I do think it was definitely better than Cluj and Columbus. They were both very, very good tournaments, but I don't know. I almost feel like there needs to be an entire other tier just for Boston. It's just too good for anybody else, which is hilarious because then you compare it to fucking FACEIT, which is just actually the worst major ever. Just same deal as PGO, just rampant tech issues. I think they canceled the whole first day of the tournament just because there's literally irreparable tech issues that they couldn't fix, and they were just going to spend the whole day and unfuck it all. It was terrible. It was a really weird tournament. A lot of weird teams that shouldn't have been there were there. Like that weird, Vice, Hiko, Katie, and Sick and Bricky fucking rogue team that nobody ever remembers. Like, there was like the really weird, nifty Renegades team. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of weird teams that shouldn't have been there. Like the weird Complexity team was in the top 8. There was a big team that I think that was like Bug Clan at the time. I don't know if it was this major, if it was the one before this, but they were abusing that Inferno Wall jump glitch thing. Playoff bracket was just okay. It was Astralis, Navi, MIBR, Team Liquid, Complexity, Big, Hellraisers, and FaZe Clan. What the fuck was that? Angel Bondic, Dead Fox, Walksick, Issa. Looking at the bracket itself. So Navi had a fairly good run to the final. They played big, which is a blowout, obviously. I don't know how it could be anything else. They played MIBR, which was not a blowout, but it was close to it. And then they got blown out by Astralis. That was bound to happen. Astralis, they played Team Liquid in the semis. I feel like that maybe would have been the better grand final, personally. Like, that was like the obvious, like, back and forth, rivalry, I guess. I don't want to necessarily say it was a rivalry because they didn't really play each other much in playoffs, but like that was the obvious thing. But the final, playing Navi, blowing out Navi, it is what it is. Like I said, I think it's the worst major probably ever. Definitely gives PGL a run for its money, but we'll move on to Kato 19. This is another like A tier for me. I think Kato 19 was one of the most competitive majors ever. I know that's probably not a popular opinion. I know a lot of people don't remember it very fondly. Maybe not necessarily they don't remember it fondly, but they just don't remember it being that good. Again, another really, really strong playoff bracket. This was Astralis, and then obviously the ENCE team that was coming into their own. There was Navi, MIBR, FaZe Clan, Liquid, Renegades, and then NIP. And hilariously enough, NIP was like maybe the worst team in this tournament. So yeah, NIP was obviously like the worst team here. Playoff bracket was weird. There was just a lot of storylines that were kind of fucked with ENCE making it to the final. And I love, everybody loves, a little bit of 2019 ENCE, It was cool, but I would have liked to see Liquid and Navi playing a semi. I would have liked to see Liquid or Navi in the final, crowned who's the number 2 team for that era. Everybody remembers the whole, like, Simple couldn't finish it. It sucks. He was in his hard carry Navi era. Like, it was what it was. I would have loved to see, this is, I think this is about as perfect of a Simple as we had. It would have been cool to see, the best player ever against the best team ever in a grand final when he was in his prime. I mean, I guess they did have that in FACEIT, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. This is an A tier tournament, obviously. Like I said, one of the best, one of the most competitive, in my opinion. Moving on to Berlin. Berlin was another weird tournament. Berlin was the last one we had before the whole COVID deal went and messed everything up. Berlin was obviously the third of the straight through wins by Astralis. Looking at the playoff bracket here again, this is another one where I feel like this is maybe like one of the best playoff brackets ever in terms of like teams that made it to the top 8. Like every team that was in the top 8 deserved to be there, Yeah, ENCE Renegades, Vitality, Vanguard, NRG, Navi, Astralis, and Team Liquid. All of these teams should have been there. This was one of the very few opportunities where I feel like NA seriously could have won a major. NRG got blown out on train, and that was all that there was, even though I feel like NRG could have won that train map, but it is what it is. When you look at like all the playoff teams, another one where I feel like it was a very, very competitive era of CS. I think Berlin had some like production and tech issues, but I don't think it was as bad as like PGL or FACEIT. But I feel like if it wasn't for the playoff bracket being as good as it was, but then you look at a Vanguard going through and you could have had Vitality, Renegades, or ENCE through. I'm going to probably stick this in C, actually. I feel like that's maybe a little bit better of a spot to keep it. We would have next had Rio, but obviously that got canceled. go to Stockholm. Stockholm is another like top tier one in my opinion. And even though there were some things that happened with that one, when I think about it and I think purely in terms of like playoffs being incredible, another like this is like up there in terms of playoff teams, Navi, G2, Gambit, Heroic, Vitality, Furia, VP, and then NIP. Like this is maybe again another contender for like strongest of all playoff brackets. Like I feel like I can say that with some certainty. Looking at the playoff bracket itself, Navi played Vitality, which was I think the number 2 team in the world in the quarter. They played Gambit, which was obviously super strong during the online era, and then they played G2 in the end. I think this is one of the best finals, even if you like kind of pretend that Ancient didn't happen and the whole final was just nuke, like double overtime. Obviously, you think about how Nico could have closed it with a deagle shot, you know, one of the best. This was the best player finally getting his ring after so many years of trying and so many finals. It was just so many great storylines coming together. Heroic made it to the quarter or to the semis. VP made it to the quarters, and they were another really good team. Gambit made it to the semis. That was another team that was incredible throughout the online era. Like this was all of the good storylines coming to a close from the online era and kind of closing that part out. I didn't watch during the online era, truthfully. I kind of took a break. I was like, yeah, Counter-Strike doesn't really exist right now, but this was a great major to come back to. This was the first one back that I had watched since I think Berlin was one of the last events that I had watched before, PGL Stockholm. So Stockholm's an A, mostly just because of the playoff teams and the playoff bracket and how everything went. Moving on, we're gonna go to Antwerp. I feel like this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I think that Antwerp is like an S tier by far, and just because of again, the playoffs were great. I remember the whole tournament just being very solid. Like there was nothing that I felt was bad. Of course, like the Copenhagen Flames and like Team Spirit maybe shouldn't have been there, but Team Spirit produced like one of the best games in recent memory that I can even think of. The Team Spirit versus FaZe Clan semifinals. Ends made it to the semis in this one. It was the number 1 team versus the number 2 team. It was the number 1 player versus the number 1 team. Again, so many this incoming storylines to here just like came together. It was awesome. This was a great major. It was finally all 5 of the FaZe Clan guys getting their first rings. I'm a kind of a FaZe Clan fan. I think it was a great final. FaZe were looking like they might screw it up on Inferno, and it was just going to be another one of the same FaZe fucking storylines. But they brought it through. They did it on Nuke. That was it. Yeah, Antwerp, in my opinion, is an S tier tournament. It was a great crowd, too. That's another thing, It was super, impartial. Everybody was cool. So we'll go on here to Rio. Rio was not great. I really wasn't a fan. There was a lot of teams that overperformed. There was a lot of teams that underperformed. Notably, FaZe didn't make it out of groups. They lost to BNE. Notably, Liquid didn't make it out of groups. I think they lost to Ents. Notably, let's see who else didn't make it out that should have. Yeah, Vitality, OG, C9. Like, these teams all just didn't do well. this was obviously outsiders first. One through, they won. Heroic made it to the final in this one. They should have capitalized on the fact that nobody was there, but it is what it is. This is when you look at the teams that should have been there and weren't there, it's really hard to rank this highly. I just struggle to feel strongly like this one was very good. There was a little bit of tech issues. The production was overall very good. When teams underperform, it makes for a bad major, and we're gonna say the same thing about fucking Paris here too. Like, it was a cool storyline. Dupree gets his 5th, Magus gets his 4th. Phase, they did get to the quarters, but they went out against Heroic. Heroic losing to Gamer Legion that should have never happened. Vitality obviously did go in to win. Gamer Legion's now going down. They're gonna go down as like one of those weird teams that made it to the finals. They're already getting split up. I think Emma's being pursued by, I think, Navi or something. But yeah, it's another like C tier for me. It's not terrible, but it's not one of the greatest either at all. I mean, I can maybe put it up here as a B. I feel like this is my definitive tier list. This is how I feel about all of them. We'll have to see how things go in CS2. We have PGL Copenhagen coming up next year. Gonna be a little bit before that happens, but if you guys enjoyed, if you made it this far, I'm like 45 minutes into the recording, so if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Hit a subscribe or don't, like it or don't. I don't really care what you do either way. Do what you feels right. You're not being detained. Thanks for watching this far, and we'll see you later with another video if I have an idea for another one.